Ladies and gentlemen, I hope I'm going live about now. We're doing back to back to back to back streams this week, which I'm really happy to be able to do. Obviously, we have a lot of Galaxy S25 Ultra coverage already behind us. We have the bigger reviews, we have some initial battery coverage, now, obviously, all the camera comparisons with the 16 Pro Max. Now, I do believe there will be more to cover, but today is kind of the thing I was really looking forward to, and it's something that I've been mentioning throughout every video where I've been covering the Galaxy S25 Ultra. First is the actual full review by GSM Arena, which I really like those guys. I might not always agree with their conclusions. Their audience is very Android focused, but they are very much a data focused review site. I wouldn't want YouTube reviews to work basically how GSM Arena does, in a very cold and sterile way. But I do like me that we do have websites aggregating such data. I think now with an N tag gone and stuff like that, it's just always good to see some hard data. Yes, we see a lot of that for like the PCMR crowd. I don't need to remind you how we just reacted to the RTX 5080 reviews, before that the 5090, though that video does not exist. So I'm happy we have something like that for smartphones. Not everything should be mass market friendly, like an MKBHD review. Not everything has to be like super duper nerdy, like, oh, how does this phone perform if we actually install Linux and shit like that. But just some good data on how's the battery life, how bright is the screen, how loud is the speaker, stuff like that. So I'm very happy to be able to use this. And some other stuff that I had actually mentioned is that both TechDroider and the TechChap actually 3 hours ago published their battery comparisons between the latest flagships. And what was funny to me is that I kept bringing up both of them, and I thought, oh, you know what? One will release a video one day and I'll have some coverage then, and then some other day I'll be able to react to the GSM Arena review. So those are all coming together at once. At your face today. Hopefully by Sunday we'll have a little bit more Apple news stuff. Usually that's when Mark Gurman's Power and newsletter comes out. Maybe he'll have like his first big report for the year to come. Speaking of Apple, of course, is that Apple just yesterday, or for the night from yesterday to today, reported their Q1 2025 financial results. These are absolutely insane. I'll cover them after we are done with the Samsung stuff. We'll briefly look if there are any other Apple news or rumors or leaks that will drop until then. But yeah, just know it was a very, very freaking good quarter. I've seen some people say, oh, there is no growth. Inflation was so bad. Like, these people forget like just how strong the freaking dollar is in comparison to every fucking currency out there right now. These $124.3 billion in revenue, even yes, if they're technically only 1% higher than the previous all-time high in revenue, the fact that they're doing this despite stronger competition in China, despite all of the AI craze that was supposed to lift like Google and Chinese competitors above them, like, this was a crazy good quarter, and I highly, highly encourage you to never trust any investor who claims otherwise. Like, Apple's PE ratio right now is 40. And Tesla's right now is 200. So if you ever want to know which company is more or less connected to their actual fundamentals, then it's definitely Apple owned. By the way, Apple is also the company that pays dividends, buys back stocks. So yeah, even if you are gonna say, you know what, Tesla might have more future proofness as a stock, maybe there's room to grow. There's never that much room to grow in comparison to a company that has already established itself. and will continue delivering, as we see. A lot of people assume that maybe the results during the corona pandemic would not be easy to replicate. Well, guess what? Apple did that. So yeah, again, we'll get into this with more detail a little bit later on. I think that's about it for the intro. Actually, shout out for you to do the YouTube jazz, as we call it around here. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it. Comment. You guys know I love interacting with a lively live chat. You can become a supporter right here on YouTube. Shout out to Angelica, Max, Maximus, and Steve. And you can also be a supporter over on Patreon, or leave a direct donation right here in the super chat or a super sticker. However you choose to engage with this channel, however you choose to support me, it's all very, very much appreciated. So let's get, without any further ado, let's get started into the hard battery data on the S25 Ultra. We see some major competitors here like OnePlus 13, Xiaomi, Vivo, the Google Pixel. Is that a last gen S20, or is that just another S25 Ultra?
The OnePlus 13, Honor Magic 7 Pro, the Xiaomi 15 Pro, the iPhone 16 Pro Max, Samsung and Pixel flagship devices. Surprising part is the iPhone got a 4680 mAh battery size. Samsung is stuck with same 5000 mAh battery, but now with 8 Elite chip and larger cooling chamber.
So the reason why I'm actually reacting to the video rather than just the individual tests, like the individual results, is because I do like to analyze like the specific tests they are running, right? If they have any validity, if I see any differences in how maybe some of the methodology might not have been done super correctly. So it's not about stealing content or anything. Obviously, these channels are far bigger, far more successful than I'll ever be on YouTube. So me reacting to them is actually really trying to analyze it. It's by definition transformative content.
Xiaomi and OnePlus got a 6100 mAh and 6000 mAh battery size. So yeah, the fact they are able to put such massive battery inside a phone thinner than the iPhone is mind-blowing.
I mean, there are other notable cutbacks in those devices in comparison to the iPhone. But yeah, the silicon carbon definitely helps with the density of those batteries volumetrically.
Now these numbers may make one device sound better than the rest, but display type, CPU, GPU and software is gonna play a huge role in this battle. Starting things with 3 hours of gaming session, 1.5 hour PUBG and 1.5 hour Asphalt with same max out graphic settings in.
Okay, so we do have the display resolutions. All of these phones are 120 hertz. All of them are around 1440p. I know some people will like really like cling on to the fact that, oh, this is like 120 pixels more or less. This you will not be able to see those pixels, believe me. And you can even see that, by the way, looking at other devices like, oh, wait. Oh, that was not the Vivo. That was Honor. Like you can even see this is like 1280 by 2800. Even that, like those extra 40 pixels versus the iPhone lost. That to me makes no difference either. Neither does the Pixel here at 1344. So yeah, just don't focus too much on these very small details. Screen size differences are also not significant enough to warrant any changes in like capacity or whatever. Between 6.7 and 6.9 inches, you should still try to make this a proper flagship. And yeah, I was right. This is the S24 Ultra. You can definitely see, by the way, some of the advantages of the non-reflective display here. Though I would argue every one of these phones is obviously usable in both indoors. It doesn't matter at all, and then outdoors, a lot of these phones are actually brighter. Now, I do have some questions whether or not the brightness is properly adjusted. Like I hope it is. He doesn't say that he wait, does he usually? I think he does measure the brightness before he tests.
Now let's go.
Okay, that's PUBG. I don't know if the music is copyrighted. I'm gonna skip through the individual test. What is that? What are those numbers? 60.
this session, battery left is 61%,
Oh, that's the left percentage. Okay, so that's
65%, 68%, 65%.
okay. So the Pixel is not doing too hot. The Honor, which is really funny because the fact that it has the Snapdragon 8 Elite and a higher capacity than the Samsung really shows that Honor. Oh, wait, Honor. Yeah, Honor does have the S8 Elite. I was like, for a moment, isn't Huawei like under sanctions? But no, Honor is separate now. Yeah, and you can see the really nice big capacity from the OnePlus 13 with the Snapdragon 8 Elite. Some good results here, some not so good results over there.
41%, 52%, and 50%. So can be seen 8 Elite devices, OnePlus
Okay, so what's
and
next?
Xiaomi are doing better than iPhone, Samsung, and Pixel. Here I mentioned the heat test score too so that you guys can get an idea which device is heating more. Now 3 continuous hours of YouTube at 1080p 60 frame, and again make sure to subscribe, that would
Okay.
mean a lot.
Just okay, that's YouTube. So 3 hours of YouTube. After 3 hours of YouTube, the Honor is just freaking dying. The Pixel is close to that. It's surprising to see the Tensor G4 and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 being so close. Again, I do have questions if the display brightness was tuned the same, but I mean, it is what it is, right? We do have those numbers. We can compare it with other tests. So the iPhone is now pulling ahead of the S25 Ultra and roughly in line with the OnePlus 13 and Xiaomi 15 Pro, though they are still leading, which is nice. And I mean, like, they're leading with 1/3 more battery capacity, so
percent in OnePlus and Xiaomi both, 23% in Honor, 33% in Pixel, and 31% in the S24 Ultra. So now surfing internet, Chrome/Safari for 1.5 hours, let's go.
he knows that you can make this go full screen, right? Also, let us just briefly appreciate the story, the history of the like the control bar down below and how it has basically established itself, and how much better Apple integrates it with the rest of the UI than it is on Android. I wonder, like, if by default settings, I assume he would have all of that turned off. But, like, what would be the refresh rate of the iPhone with that? Because you cannot force the iPhone to just always run at 120 FPS. Let's say because Face ID knows if you are looking at the screen, but you can turn that off. So my question is, at what point would the iPhone really say, look, if you aren't even looking at this, why are we displaying it at 120 hertz? And I mean, like, there are small differences here that will still impact a little bit. Like the Galaxy shows like 2.5 like blur buster alien shots. The iPhone 3, the OnePlus shows 2. There are ways that you can make these tests just a tiny bit more scientific. Not to say that they are bad in any way, but still. Ducky Boy, all phones probably. Don't know what probably, but you deleted your message anyway. Why does it look like the OnePlus just runs this much faster? Is that the one phone that happened to be like in sync with the camera? All phones are probably on LTPO. Every phone here, yes. Every phone here uses LTPO panels. Samsung is like the oldest screen tech here. I believe it's the only 8-bit panel here. It's only the only one that cannot reach like 1800 nits or 2000 nits of full screen brightness. The Google does have technically the screen that gets the brightest. That would be the one advantage here. And these are more, I believe the OnePlus is a BOE screen or the Xiaomi this year, but I'm actually not sure what the supplies are. I probably should look this up again.
So after this session, battery life is 34%, 39%.
The Xiaomi here is very interesting because it does have like legitimately basically 1/3 more battery life than the iPhone. I mean, it has a little bit higher resolution, but it has a smaller screen. And even with 6100 milliamp hour battery, it just doesn't manage to pull ahead by a lot. Like at least the OnePlus 13 kind of does like 10% more. I mean, right, if you go 39 versus 43, here you sort of get like basically nothing over the iPhone.
43%, 41%, 15%, 17%, and 21%. Now Instagram for 1.5 hours and make sure to follow me there.
But by the way, I get it now. You're asking whether it's their LTPO, right? Because I mentioned like the iPhone adjusting the refresh rate specifically of the website. Yes, all of these phones could do that, but I'm not sure how much their software will do that by default. That was my line of thinking, not the actual screen technology. The screen technology should be capable across the board in doing that. Okay, I'll skip some music again. I hope. Granted, though, if it was copyright music, right, then he would have been flagged. Here, the iPhone now matching the Xiaomi 15 Pro, almost matching the OnePlus 13. TikTok, definitely a well-optimized app on iOS in that regard. Killing the Honor almost, and the Pixel being close to that, and then the Samsung following soon. Is the LTPO on? Like you can turn it off on Android. On iPhone, it's always on. Even if you put it to 60 hertz, the LTPO can still go down, yes, but I wouldn't want to disable it. How he has treated the Android devices, I actually don't know. And again, it's not the LTPO that gets turned off, it's the variable refresh rate. LTPO just describes the actual foundation of like the screen and how it's built. It does not describe whether or not the screen refreshes variably, because that's just the implementation in software.
And 12%. Finally, camera usage.
But then again, the problem is when people fixate on stuff like that, right? They will say like, oh, Safari doesn't always display at 120 hertz or something like that. Yeah, I can kind of maybe get that complaint. But whenever you're watching video, right? For example, if you're watching a 24 frames per second movie, Apple runs the display at 48 hertz, right? Because 24 fits nicely into 48. You probably want a little bit of wiggle room, so you can just match whenever the image refreshes. Maybe the frame timing isn't perfect, so in the 48 refresh window, that's perfect. That will look perfect, right? Similarly, if you have a 30 FPS video, you will probably want to run it in like a 60 FPS container. If you have a 60 FPS video, you probably also want to run it in a 60 hertz container, just so you don't waste energy on 120. Usually you can match like 60 and 60 pretty well. But for this scenario, LTPO isn't just variable to preserve energy, even though it does that too, but it actually serves some other purposes. For one, rightfully aligned FPS and hertz look noticeably smoother by themselves, but they also look cleaner. These screens don't do like black frame insertion, for example, which technically would be the best way. So you have like, for example, some gamers will enable black frame insertion. So let's say you run your game at 60 FPS, but your screen can do like 120 or something like that. And you basically run your frame, right, that is given to you by your PC or console or whatever, and after that you run a black frame. That way you have like a very definitive end to your frame, and for that you usually need very high response rate. So OLED, for example, is really good for that, and that makes it very clean. Now it's not quite the same, but if you just have properly aligned FPS and hertz, like 24 to 48, 30 to 60, that makes that transition from frame to frame also noticeably cleaner. Yes, technically, maybe it would even be the best way to run 24 FPS movies in like a 72 or 96 hertz container and then insert black frames between each individual frame. But I mean, 48 FPS, 48 hertz also does that to a degree. So it's like when people say, oh, it isn't 120 and they lose their shit, I don't see the difference between 90 and 120 hertz. If I could turn down my iPhone from 120 to 90 to preserve battery life and generate a little bit less heat on an iPhone 15 Pro Max, I'll be all for it. I'm confused that the S24 Ultra is so much worse than the iPhone because it ranked way closer to the iPhone when the 16 was launched. Yeah, it only ranked that way though by the end on Mr. Who's the Boss's test. It was really only that one specific Mr. Who's the Boss test, and the problem is I've seen like Samsung fanboys run with that specific piece of data again and again and again over the last, like, when was it? Like, it was like a couple of months after, right? Like the iPhone 16 Pro Max launched, and then I believe a few weeks later he had that test, and he said that like, oh, the Galaxy got so much better because of software refinements, but then people actually checked some of the settings that he had enabled or disabled, and they said that basically the Galaxy was like extremely aggressive in turning off background app refresh. Yeah, maybe that's what hurts it. I actually am not sure. Maybe this is just the proper default settings. I would say the Ultra was also closer to the iPhone in the other tests. In which one? The S25 Ultra? Because the S25 Ultra is as close to the 16 Pro Max, honestly, as I would expect it to be. Don't forget, there are also differences with how the last percentages perform. So there is a chance that maybe Samsung's last 5%, depending on how the battery readout works, are way better than like their other percentages. I mentioned that, I believe, in yesterday's video or somewhere close to that, that like, you know how it takes a lot to get from 100% to 99, a lot longer than it takes to go from like 99 to 98. A lot of stuff can happen. And yeah, you are also correct. When the iPhone 16 Pro Max came out, maybe in the Mr. Who's the Boss test, the iPhones just were a little bit hit by early iOS 18. I mean, Samsung has like early teething issues too. I always say, Samsung does improve their phones through software updates, just not nearly as much as Samsung fanboys pretend it does. And one thing that I absolutely hate is when they claim that AI features or some algorithm on device improves your battery life down the road. That's just not going to happen. And I'm sorry. Like, it might turn off some features, yes, but that's not some deep optimization. I can go into my settings and turn off background app refresh too. That's not the same. And also one thing that I would mention about the TechDroider test, however he tested, the phones last pretty long. Like you can see, we're almost 10 hours in and the Pixel still hasn't died, right? And even in Mr. Who's the Boss's video about the S25 Ultra, he mentioned that he gets like 9 hours of screen on time on that device, right? So every test will be a bit different. What about S25 Ultra chipset? I guess it beats the iPhone 16 Pro Max on multi-core. Yes, it does. It beats it in multi-core. That's true. The iPhone goes up to 9,000 in Geekbench multi-core. The Galaxy goes around 10,000. Yep. The iPhone goes up to 3,600 in single core, the Galaxy to 3,100 in single core. And then in gaming benchmarks, there are very significant differences between which games you test. I know some sites, including, unfortunately, GSM Arena, still like to test with Wildlife Extreme. I have no idea why that 3D Mark app in itself features newer benchmarks inside. Like, it's like me testing like Cinebench 2022 at this point, so I really don't quite understand it. To those who don't know, like Wildlife Extreme is on modern smartphones basically entirely bandwidth dependent. Like, it doesn't matter how much you improve your architecture or shit like that. As long as you have enough compute, it will then just scale with your memory, which is not how any other big game works. Ducky Boy, to be honest, most mobile games use 10% of the phone's performance. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned that in yesterday's video where I said, like, my most played game on my iPhone is backgammon, and after that there's a Eastern European card game called Durak that I spiel. My God, Jesus. Like that's where like 3 languages combined, my German, my Russian, and my English. But like I played that game. Nerd World, would you suggest switch to Galaxy S25 Ultra from 15 Pro Max? Hell no. I have a 15 Pro Max myself. Like, for one, I do not think that switching, like, I don't think that the Galaxy right now is the phone that would encourage you to switch platforms. Now, if you tell me your reasons to switch, I could recommend you potentially an Android phone, including the S25 Ultra. But if you're just looking at the S25 Ultra because, oh my God, my iPhone 15 Pro Max has a degraded battery at this point, mine does too, it's at 87% capacity. At that point, I'm like, well, yeah, but the 17 Pro Max will be better than the Galaxy S25 Ultra in every way. And the reason we know that is because even the iPhone 16 Pro Max already beats it in stuff like battery life, display brightness, main camera performance, speaker tests, microphone tests. So while I'm not saying that the Galaxy S25 Ultra is bad, it's definitely not $1,300 good. I mean, Samsung knows that. That's why they have those crazy early day discounts. But it's especially not good enough to make an iPhone user switch right now. Not in my opinion, at least. Go with Google, Xiaomi, or OnePlus. I really want non-reflective screen. The problem is, do you really want it enough to switch platforms? And also, we'll look into, I'll just show you certain specs. People mistake how devices look in front of a camera versus how they look to you in regular life. Whenever like a device is like moved around, it's shown off angle, right, on a camera, yeah, that's when reflections will look absolutely horrible on a highly reflective screen. Like the iPhone is comparatively high reflective, right? But you yourself will have your phone in a 90-degree angle to your eyes. Even if you have it down there, you usually don't have it at a crazy angle to have the sunlight maximized on top of it. So it will look far better to your human eye than it does to a camera. But also, more importantly, it's a test that I've been waiting for. The Galaxy S25 Ultra display is not very impressive. Look, 1400 peak brightness, that basically makes up the difference for the anti-reflective screen. Even worse, this is an 8-bit panel. This is like the last flagship with an 8-bit panel. It will have worse color banding. It will have worse HDR performance than the iPhone. And even like in manual mode, it's like not very like impressive here. So just trying to say, don't buy into like the hype for any individual features. I've talked about yesterday like how PWM, once you aren't bothered by it, it doesn't matter. PWM could be 120 refreshes, which granted would be terrible for most of us. But if you aren't bothered by it, then that's fine. Now, some people will have like 4,000 refresh RPM, pulse width modulation, right? But does it really matter if you don't see it at 480 anyway anymore? So again, don't try to go into individual spec points here, especially not when you have to pay like $1,300. Reflections looks worse on camera because the reflections also reflect on the lens. Yes, Ducky Boy, absolutely correct. And yeah, the S25 Ultra, you can easily save like $500, sometimes even $600 if there's maybe some store clearance. What cloud service do you use on your Mac, iCloud Drive or Dropbox? I use only iCloud Drive because it integrates directly with the desktop. Plus, I share my iCloud Drive. We have a 2 terabyte family thing, and it's used for like photos that my mom saves, my aunt saves, my cousin, which is basically a sister to me, saves, and her 2 daughters. So it's a full household, just not in one household. And we use, I believe now, over 1 terabyte combined. So it actually makes sense. And yeah, technically I pay for it all, but it's still a pretty decent value once you divide it between 6. And it just makes sense to do it. Let me continue.
At 4K 60 till they all go down.
So the end, this one highly now benefits the iPhone because the iPhone obviously is very, very efficient with its camera. So I wouldn't be surprised if the iPhone here actually pulls ahead of the Xiaomi. Wait, what is Xiaomi doing? What is this test? What is this pattern? Can it not Oh, the rest of the interface disappears. And it shows just that it's recording, right? Okay, I'll skip
on par with Pixel 9. So guys, the Pixel 9.
Okay, yeah, the Pixel being the worst makes absolutely the sense to me that does. It's not a bad phone, but the Tensor chips just aren't great, at least for now. Which Android phone would you rank #1 in 2025? I think currently I would probably say, and this is, I'll disconnect it entirely from my own like dislike of like specific brands and how they maybe steal too much from others or their connection to the Chinese Communist Party. I would say the Vivo X200 Pro is right now my favorite Android device. I think I would put the S25 Ultra behind it over the likes of Xiaomi or OnePlus because I still think they have features like nicer speakers that just to me are very important in the phone, plus a few niceties like the S Pen, plus in general their software is a bit more refined. So I'll forgive them for the shortcomings a little bit more than I would like OnePlus, which I think has become way too expensive to still be relatively compromised, especially in the camera department. But both the Vivo and the Xiaomi will get Ultra models, and at that point it would probably be the Vivo 200 Ultra or the Xiaomi 15 Ultra that just becomes. I would say Xiaomi 15 Ultra, but those have to come out still, right? So right now I'm just saying for the phones that are already out. Yeah, but by that point I would probably agree that it would be either one. Either the Xiaomi 15 Ultra or the Vivo. Everyone creating hype for One UI 7. Yeah, it feels fake as fuck, to be honest. Like, I feel like people just get bored and want something new. And I've seen, like, for example, Aaron in like Mr. Who's the Boss's review yesterday. He was like, Apple butchered the Apple Photos app. I'm like, okay, that's one opinion. But then his alternative to that, the far better alternative, was the Samsung Photos app. And I'm like, brother, you clearly don't actually use those apps. You clearly are still majority an iPhone user, or whenever you just take pictures, you just scroll through your freaking gallery on your Galaxy. Like, yes, maybe even like Google Gemini is better at searching for your older photos than even the newer Apple Intelligence enabled photo search inside iOS 18. Sure. But this idea that the UI is actually better in Samsung, that's just not true. I just interacted with an S24 Ultra in One UI 6. I don't actually think the camera app got that many changes in One UI 7, so I'll just take that experience and juxtapose it to the S25 Ultra. And it's not like, guys, sometimes people will say, oh, you're just unfamiliar. I'm not, believe me. I use tech all the time. Like sometimes when a friend buys like a new phone, usually I'll be like, you know what, can I borrow it for a few days? Or God knows, stay the night at my place and we'll have a few drinks and I'll play around with your phone. I'm actually pretty familiar with how it works. What are your thoughts on Asus ROG Pro 9? I don't recommend people buy gaming phones unless you really plan on gaming a lot. It's not a bad device, but the cameras are not good in comparison. It's really like, it's not very comfortable. And the refinement in software from Asus is not really good. It won't get as many software updates as something like a Samsung device. So while I'm not downplaying, yeah, those gaming phones the Red Magic, for example, with its 7,000 milliampere hour battery, they can have some pretty impressive specs. But then, for example, the fact that some have active cooling, I actually see that as a negative because now I'll have to worry about my phone more, about rain or dropping it in the bathtub because, yes, I use my phone there. Yeah, but I mean, to each their own. I don't think it's bad. I got used to the new iPhone gallery like after 4 days. Same. I think the only thing that bothers me still, and I actually think it's a bug, is the recently saved pictures sometimes don't automatically show up just in all of my photos. And I know that that shouldn't be happening because 95% it does. But I've been like helping a female friend with picking a few outfits. No details on the conversation. And I've been sending her photos that I just saved from the internet. And it happened so that like 2 pictures of 8 were in my recently saved pictures, and I even looked through them. I thought, oh, sometimes images get like sorted in weirdly because they are actually like old files, even though they shouldn't. But that didn't happen either. They just weren't added to my regular photos library. They just existed in recently saved, and that honestly, if that was an often use case for me, I would be pretty pissed. If that was an often use case that regularly went wrong. I get you, nerd word. If you don't care that much about camera, I would say go for it. I'm really done with iOS. I want to switch to Android. My question is, though, what exactly is bothering you about iOS? Because right now, I know a lot of people all the time feel the grass is greener on the other side syndrome, right? Like, that happens to me too. I'll experience like a bug amidst the beta phase because of course the beta has some bugs. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna freaking switch or whatever. But you have a 15 Pro Max. I have a 15 Pro Max. It's a pretty damn good phone. The 16 Pro Max is just better in every way. Small issues, for example, if battery wasn't enough for you, it's better on the 16 Pro Max. If the display dimmed a little bit too much for you, that's better on the 16 Pro Max. If the camera might be even a little too warm for you and photographic styles are not enough of a compensation mode, the new photographic styles are better. The new ultra-wide camera, even though not miles better, is better. So the speakers are even better and the microphones are best in class. So my question is, what exactly about iOS, because the iPhone clearly is not a bad piece of hardware, what about iOS pisses you off so much right now that you are considering switching?
Pro XL was the first to go down at 10 hour 9 minute, which I think is a decent
iPhone YouTube upload are really slow. Same videos upload faster on Android for some reason. I mean, if you really want to, like, maybe. Do you close the YouTube app when you do the upload? Do you use the YouTube Studio app?
Decent score on par with other 8 Gen 3 devices. Samsung S25 Ultra went down.
Yeah, by the way, 10 hours, 16 minutes actually lines up with other tests from TechDroider. So this is why I'm always surprised when, like, and Mr. Who's the Boss, I believe, actually had the Galaxy S25 24 Ultra at a similar level, but then suddenly in one test versus the 16 Pro Max, it suddenly had 12 hours. Nerd World, then before you actually switch, I highly recommend try doing shit through the YouTube Studio app. The YouTube app, unfortunately, on iPhone has one tendency that I dislike, and I think it's just Google. It likes to close itself off or to limit its background app refresh functionality. Like, it can refresh itself in the background, but I feel like the issue is often that, like, all my apps will stay open in RAM, right? And I sometimes don't even have a YouTube video playing in the background. And then I go back to the YouTube app and it's like the only app that needs to reload. So yeah, at that point, like, yeah, if YouTube is your biggest priority, maybe. I mean, it does make sense. It is a first party service for an Android device, but it never bothered me that much. But also, use YouTube app on Android phone and it upload video faster. Nah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, so the iPhone took 1 day. That's because the app stopped doing it. Do it over the YouTube Studio app. I promise you it will be better. I don't upload much myself, but for example, I did upload my few shorts that I did here on this channel through the YouTube Studios app directly. But it worked instantly. I mean, yes, those were 1-minute videos, but like they were basically instantaneously. If it were a 10-minute video, I assume it would have taken it like 10 times longer, but 10 times longer, 30 seconds would still be like very short amount of time. The hotspot internet, OMJ, it shut itself after 5 minutes. That sounds more like a bug. My hotspot works forever. What version of iOS are you running?
On a 10R16, which is a great score for a year-old device. Shockingly, then it was the Honor.
Also, you are like stuff like hotspot. Don't expect that stuff to always be better on other devices automatically. I'll give YouTube Studio a try. Same, I will for sure go Android out using iOS since iPhone 4S. Yeah, let me know. I mean, you can always join. I always tell people, I know there's like a misconception about this community. I don't know why. I even changed my name for those of you who are OGs. I've started streaming. The channel was called iMark back in the day. I switched to Mark Tech around like 15K subs or something like that. Like I've always said, Android users are welcome here. Windows users are welcome here. Hell, I'll even recommend what Android device to buy, even depending on your price range, right? I'm not even one of those guys who will just send you to buy the Ultra or the Pro devices, right? But I'll just ask you to, if you're coming at me asking like, oh, which device I'm sick of Android or I'm sick of iOS, I'm just recommend you to think, do you actually believe that all your problems will be automatically solved? And also don't forget, that's the syndrome of grass is greener on the other side. Do you think that you will not encounter any other issues, right? Because app optimization on Android, sure, we might talk about how the YouTube app is better maybe on Android. But do you think that you will have a similarly positive change with every other app? I'll doubt it. Look at Mr. Who's the Boss's video yesterday and just how zoom quality varies between iOS and Android. How his like Pokemon card trade game, right, didn't maintain 60 FPS on a Samsung with an 8 Elite chip, right? So that's what I encourage you guys to consider. The latest iOS version never skip updates. That's good. I really wish Pixel phones got faster chipset. This is why I really don't recommend actually you switch now. You still have such a modern device in the iPhone 15 Pro Max. If by September if by August and September you still have a wish to switch, right? Don't forget, by that point you will have a Tensor G5 Google device, which will actually be built on TSMC 3 nanometer. You will likely have a larger camera upgrade that year from Pixel than actually from Pixel 8 to Pixel 9. So you're looking at a better upgrade. And by that time, any of the devices you're looking at here will be $300-$400 less expensive, while your iPhone might have lost only another $150-$200 of resale value. So you would be better off overall. And in the meantime, you just get to experience, like iOS 18.4 and new Siri. Maybe you'll install like the beta of iOS 19. Maybe you'll like it. But switching like halfway through the iPhone upgrade cycle, right? Like we're like 5 months now after the 16 Pro. You still have a very modern product, a product that I myself know works pretty well. It's not something I recommend. If it actually was working poorly for you and it's not something that could be fixed, then I would be recommending you shit. But right now, my biggest recommendation is try the YouTube Studio app and maybe wait for the Pixel 10.
Magic 7 Pro, which went down.
Yeah, the Honor, that's just poor software optimization. No idea what's happening over there. I know they're using like a BOE screen, but that shouldn't be so bad.
10 or 20 minutes, not to mention the display's 1280p, so I hope they'll fix and optimize the battery in there. The Samsung S25 Ultra with not so massive 5000 mAh battery went 11 hours 5 minutes, which is a fantastic score. This is the power of optimization, amazing.
And it roughly lines up with like the 5 to 8% improvements in battery life. This is why I always told people when people were like saying, oh, Snapdragon 8 Elite devices got like 25-30% longer battery life, and they were talking about devices that also got like 20% larger battery capacities. So 1.2 times 1.05 or 1.07, that's how you get like 30% more battery life. And the Samsung, which keeps the same battery capacity but gets a more efficient chip, gets roughly like 45 minutes or something like that in battery life.
Job done. The OnePlus 13 went down at 11 hours 16 minutes. Great job done, I would say. Xiaomi went.
Yeah, I would say I almost expected more. Maybe there are specific things like maybe with the camera as the end test, it just consumes too much energy because the 8 Elite is more efficient, but it also packs a lot more horsepower for its camera processing. So but yeah, I understand why camera testing is included here. I don't like it when it's like 3 hours or something like that of the overall tests, but it does simulate like, oh, what's going to be your battery life on a vacation where you might be taking more photos, more videos, or if you need to like record your kid's birthday party or whatever else, right? Or hell, maybe you make adult movies you're at home or shit like that, and you don't plug your phone in because you need all the chargers for all your freaking toys at that moment. So camera testing is still good to have. I just wouldn't base like a lot of my test on it, but a bit is not bad.
Went next at 11 hours 19, amazing.
Very freaking hot. Whatever the Xiaomi does with its cooling system, I'm just consistently flabbergasted by sometimes like the inconsistency of how it also generates heat. Maybe it specifically is a problem with the camera, so that probably would explain why in the end it got really hot. But yeah, for a device that with every year they say like we improved the vapor chamber and shit like that, it just never gets cool enough in my opinion.
Score, but there's always a bigger fish, and that is the iPhone 16 Pro Max with a small battery size. Latest iOS 18.3 scored 11.
iOS 18.3, that's good, and probably also like iOS 18.3 after a day or two of setup, which never run a battery test on a brand new OS version. That's always a recipe for disaster. Give it 24, preferably 72 hours. Yeah, and then, yeah, so definitely what Apple is achieving here is nigh miraculous. I'm going to try YouTube Studio upload. I hope it will solve the issue. Also, go to your settings and check if both apps, both YouTube and YouTube Studio, have background app refresh enabled. Good luck, man.
Hours 21, just mind-blowing.
Yeah, so this is, by the way, like I had a fan for a short period of time who even was like a Patreon supporter, but he didn't we didn't agree at some point, and he really liked talking about stuff like silicon carbon batteries. He was like, oh, the iPhone needs 6,000 milliampere hours. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't mind seeing the iPhone have like at least like 5,500 milliampere hours. I think at that point it would just be positively insane. At that point you would probably be like scratching at 13.5 hours of battery life or something like that. But yeah, there is a reason why Apple is fine getting closer to 5,000. I mean, they did increase capacity from the 15 Pro Max to the 16 Pro Max, but there's a reason why they increased capacity by like 200 something milliampere hours and not by 1,000 like some of these Android phones did. And by the way, this testing, it is to me representative because I've seen now so many tests with similar results where yes, the 8 Elite is more efficient than the 8 Gen 3. Yes, the BOE screens are also not bad. Yes, especially if a phone has like the latest LTPO screen from Samsung, they'll have good efficiency. And yes, the silicon carbon battery will deliver good results overall. But the iPhone is just hella impressive for how little battery it has. With that being said, let's see if the tech chap agrees.
Now, I know you want to skip right to the end to see
No,
who won.
I actually don't.
Fun in that. Come with me on this journey.
I'll
as we
come
figure
with
out which
you.
of these 9
Let's
flagship
come
phones
with the
has
tech
the
chap,
best
guys.
and the worst battery. And here we go. Timer has started. So on the table in front of me here, I've got the latest Pixel 9 Pro XL. I've got the new OnePlus 13, as well as the Vivo X200 Pro.
Okay, so he does have the view. I think if any phone has the ability to truly beat the iPhone, and I don't mean like plus minus 15 minutes, depending on the test, I think it's the Vivo X200 Pro. I think one thing partially about that is that Vivo is also a little bit more aggressive with its software in potentially deleting background tasks. Not in a way that actually makes it unusable because you have to reload everything, but I think just smart battery and RAM management. Which mouse do you use with your Mac? Well, I do prefer my Magic Trackpad, but for all other needs, I do have the Logitech Master 3S, I believe. Yeah, the MX Master 3S. This is the specific Mac version, though from what I understand, the Mac version runs fine with Windows. You'll just need an adapter for a desktop, and the Windows device still over Bluetooth runs fine with the Mac. So I highly recommend you. It's really worth the $100. It's ergonomically nice. It has extra buttons. It has extra scroll wheels. Feels really good. You can even like vary between like this full like right. You see it never stops scrolling, or you click on it. Wait, no, you click this button and now it just goes by step, right? So that really unsmooth thing. And if you are actually used to multi-touch, you'll click this and boom, now it's scrolling smoothly. Yeah, and this one scrolls side to side, so that's nice. There's obviously not much to scroll right now side to side on the screen. Few extra buttons if you need it. Really nice product. I have a question. I use both Windows and Mac. Why Mac feels slower to me? I think, well, it doesn't feel to me. What Mac are you using? That could make a big difference.
16 Pro Max, Oppo X8 Pro, Honor Magic 7 Pro.
Oh, he does have the latest Oppo too. That's nice.
The new Galaxy S25 Ultra.
I always forget. So the Oppo has a little bit less than 6,000 milliampere hours. The Vivo is at exactly 2,000. I always thought although exactly 6,000. I always thought this was 6,200. I don't know why I thought that.
As well as the last gen S24 Ultra.
Okay. So it's not bad. Wait, let me briefly go to GSM Arena. Did I really get the battery capacity wrong? I have an M1 Max MacBook Pro. Mine is perfectly smooth for me, man. Maybe you just don't like some animations on Mac. That could be the reason. It also could depend on which app you're using, right? If you are maybe using something that still relies on Rosetta translation, maybe that could be a problem. So battery life. Wait. Could that be part of it? So the Vivo X200 Pro International has 6,000 milliampere hours. Okay. But does the Chinese version has a higher capacity? No, that's also 6,000. Okay. Don't know. Austria, Hungary, and Germany model with 5,200. Oh, that's why I thought the 200 in the end. Oh, then I must have seen it on a German website for some reason. I don't know. Maybe they don't have a patent to use like silicon carbon here in Germany? That could be a reason. That's interesting. Maybe I should look into that. Yeah, animation feels slow. Like I'm way fast with Windows finding my files and multitask. Multitask feels so slow on Mac. Guy, can I recommend you an app called Magnet? It's way better for multitasking than even the new thing in macOS Sequoia. Let me show you. I don't want to go to the App Store. Magnet, macOS. That should help you at least like manage your multitasking stuff. So you can set it up the way you like it, just move. Also, it might just be an experience thing. To be honest, if you are really comfortable with Windows, you're really used to it, you might just never be fully satisfied with Mac because Mac has like a very, still not a completely distinct vision, but it is different from Windows. But yeah, if I can recommend you something for today, try the YouTube Studio app rather than the YouTube app. Check background app refresh settings on your iPhone 15 Pro Max, and maybe look into a multitasking management app like this on iOS. There's no option background app refresh on YouTube Studio, then it should just work. That would be my assumption. So let's go back.
Because I'm kind of curious to see how much of an improvement the battery is, despite the fact that the battery has stayed the same, and also the previous Xiaomi 14 Ultra, because at the time of recording, that is still their latest phone. I believe we will have a 15 Ultra imminently. So even though these videos take me an absolute age to make, I'm probably going to have to make another one next month with potentially an X200 Ultra from Vivo, maybe an X8 Ultra from Oppo, and also, of course, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. So there are even newer flagship phones right around the corner, and I'll come back. So make sure
I dislike this like staggered release schedule, where honestly, I think that the fact that people buy the X200 Pro as like a flagship, it's really bad to me, because the specific improvements, will not be really big in the X200 Ultra. But I'm like, really, you couldn't let me choose right then and there, right? I know it's like FOMO mentality to worry about that, but I really like that Apple releases like their flagships one at a time, like all together, I mean.
You have hit that subscribe button. Now, if you've seen one of these battery tests before, you know the drill. I'm setting the phones to 150 nits of brightness, all with the latest.
Okay, so he most likely has configured the brightness, or not just went by eye, which one feels like 150. What the F is going on with the Google Pixel? That does not look as bright as the rest.
They all have 100% battery health. That is very important.
Okay,
none of these have been
so that was before the brightness calibration.
For more than a couple of weeks, I have to regularly buy new phones. I'm also running just on Wi-Fi for this test. All background apps closed. And while, of course, your mileage will vary.
All background apps closed is not the same as all background app refreshes disabled, but okay.
Hopefully, this gives you a bit of an indication how they perform relative to each other. And let's just kick off with a Geekbench 6 test, just to get an idea of how they perform, because we've actually got 5 different chips on test here. I know a couple of these phones can also get higher scores if you put them in their dedicated high performance modes, but I'm leaving everything as default here. And
yeah, so you can see here the Galaxy is overclocked versus like the rest of the 8 Elite products, so that's why it gets up to 10,000 multi-core score. I really have to say it doesn't sustain it well. Like I've looked into now into some performance tests with it. It has horrible sustained performance in comparison to the rest. Now it starts at the high point, so technically it doesn't drop that much below the rest. Well, current gen, obviously not comparing to the Google, which is like this is half. How do you ship a phone that is half the performance of the rest? Yeah, and even in single core performance, I don't really care here. I think that the 8 Elite is close enough to the iPhone that with faster memory, faster storage, enough software optimization, these phones can perform. They won't, but they can perform in theory equally good with these performance levels. In fact, I think that the S24 Ultra could perform incredibly well with proper software optimization. I think the only phone here that has really completely unacceptable performance levels, no matter how you look at it, is the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL.
You can see the Pixel is way behind, followed by the 8 Gen 3 chip in the Xiaomi and S24.
So let me just skip a little bit through the tests.
We're going to go through Instagram and TikTok.
Okay, so he does also report on interim results. You can already see here how this is a Dimensity 9400 device, by the way. Sorry if I said this was also an 8 Elite. So the iPhone here dropped pretty quickly in battery life in a game. So were the settings exactly the same? Because that's not always true in games.
We actually have a much smaller battery size, around 5270, whereas the global and Chinese variant has a massive 5850. That is a big difference. And actually the one we have here is smaller, the battery is smaller than the previous Magic 6 Pro. So for this
I'm not interested in the Magic whatsoever.
test, we're going to go through Instagram and TikTok. We're going to play Temple Run 2, which isn't particularly demanding, as well as the much more demanding War Thunder, and also a whole bunch of YouTube. And I'm going to cycle through them every sort of 15 to 30 minutes, which, as you can imagine, these videos are an absolute pain in the ass to make. So I hope this is kept it Wi-Fi only. And secondly, yes, there are, of course, many more phones I haven't included in this test. Like,
okay, I'm really confused about that initial drop on the iPhone because it's just following it at this point. And like it's falling behind the S25 Ultra. Whatever he was doing with like that gaming test, that just feels a bit off to me.
Like the ROG Phone 9, the iQOO, Sony phones, but I've got 9 phones on test here, which is a pretty good amount. Although feel free to drop a comment of which phone you'd like me to include next time. Have a look at this. It's my fancy new thermal imaging camera, which I'm just really excited to play with. And you can see how the phones are in terms of the external temperature from the screen in terms of this heat map. And this is after about 15 minutes of playing Temple Run. And it seems the Pixel is the hottest, the iPhone is the coolest, and interestingly, the S25 Ultra with its larger vapor chamber cooler is a touch cooler by like 1 degree than the S24 Ultra. So that is nice to see a bit of an upgrade there. Now, as usual with my battery test videos, I want to do an overnight standby test, see how much they drop overnight, because I think that's interesting to know, and it also lets me have a bit of a break and, go to sleep. Cue the music.
Yeah, the iPhone is just like that 18 to 20% battery difference with these other two models. It just follows it now from test to test.
And then through the miracle of editing, we are back. Good morning. And we're looking at a drop of between 4 and 6% across the range of these 9 phones there, which isn't too bad for a 12-hour...
Is it the same game? What is it? Is this War Thunder?
Overnight standby test. Not too bad at all.
Are you not testing other games?
You can see some pretty clear patterns emerging here. On the right, the Xiaomi down to 20. The Vivo still at 53. I think we might know who's going to win this one. But then at the 8-hour 15 mark, the Xiaomi kicks the bucket. Well, it technically goes into this hibernation mode. A few of the phones offer that. But for the purpose of this test, while that will go on for longer and you can use it for emergency purposes and messages, I'm going to call it dead at that point. So the Xiaomi has lost, closely followed by the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL. That lasted a little bit longer. But then, about 20 minutes after the Pixel, the S24 Ultra is out of juice, leaving the S25 Ultra with about 6 percentage points remaining, which turns out is good for about another 40-45 minutes of use, which actually is a surprisingly big upgrade, given that they have the exact same battery cell, and we've all given them a bit of grief for not increasing it to 55 or 6,000. But then, just 3 minutes later, we lose the iPhone, the 16 Pro Max, which is actually a huge improvement over the previous gen phones, the 15 and the 14, and actually is about on par as we've seen with the new S25 Ultra, but still just takes the win there. 4 phones left, but not for long. 10% left in the tank. still falling behind here. They're just shy of the iPhone 16 Pro Max, which, as you maybe would do a little bit better given that.
Okay, so I have no idea. He ran a lot of gaming tests, maybe to just run it out quicker. But he played Temple Run, and he played a ton of. I think it's War Thunder or whatever. It's World of Warships. I have no like war planes. I guess. Does he say more about his methodology? No. Okay, I don't have a problem with the iPhone losing. Like, these devices have way bigger battery capacities, but I think that a 28% difference in the end should have given you maybe some alarm bells on, like, maybe I'm not testing on the exact same settings here or something like that. Maybe the iPhone app triggers 120 refresh rate. Let me actually check. Is it War Thunder? Can somebody help me? Do you know what that plane app is called? War Thunder iOS? Yeah, I think it's War Thunder. I always see ads for it. So War Thunder iOS 120 hertz. Is 400. The PS5 Pro already supports 120. War Thunder and PS5 Pro. War Thunder iPhone versus Android. Is War Thunder mobile? It's such a weird game to test because it's not really, like, it's not unpopular, but it's not as popular as like your Genshin Impact or something like that. And like, even the PUBG testing just made a lot more sense to me. Like Fortnite, for example. Like, I know, granted, obviously there are questions with Fortnite availability, but like War Thunder mobile, does iPhone support 120 FPS in War Thunder? Oh yeah, their quality, their texture quality difference, their ray trace settings. Did he just leave it on auto and not correct? It does. It also has ray tracing, 120 FPS and max graphics. Oh, I think honestly he didn't fully calibrate that specific test. And again, like, just the difference here. It's not that there's any difference. I'm fine if the iPhone lost by even by half an hour, 45 minutes. That's absolutely okay. I said it myself. If I believe that the true device here that would be the iPhone is the Vivo. But I'm not sure if the testing here was done correctly. And also, it's just a weird game to include. But again, people will just call me a fanboy because I dare to question methodology. It's the same shit as when I call out SuperSaf for not saying how long the exposure time was, and then it turns out the iPhone had 3 seconds of exposure time for a night mode photo, and then the Samsung had almost 5 seconds, and I'm like, oh, of course there will be differences, and people just call me a fanboy for that. So at this point, I'll just give up, I guess. I guess I can at least mildly show you. Wait, did I have GSM Arena closed? Or did I open something else? Magnet. Yeah, I think I had it here. So, the Galaxy S25 Ultra review. So I think that because of the battery life and because of my little interruptions here, or diversions, I should say, we actually did cover plenty of the data here. So I will actually give a small compliment here to things like, of course, as always, a big compliment to the anti-glare screen. A nice compliment to the speakers, which did not get worse despite it being a thinner product. The charging speed at least did not get worse, but again, it doesn't quite hold up to Chinese competitors, but it is faster than the iPhone. Yadi da di da, you know at least those details. So I already covered the brightness. Again, the brightness is not just a sign of Samsung not wanting to like have burn-in or anything. This is an older generation panel. It's an 8-bit panel. It's basically the last flagship to do so. It doesn't seem to have the graininess issue quite as much as the S24 family did, but it's definitely not the best screen out there. Now, here are some battery life tests, and we'll actually add some devices that we just saw, like the Vivo X200 Pro. We'll add the Oppo, no opportunities, the Oppo Find X8 Pro. And I think we're gonna add the Red Magic. Wait, is it not called the Red Magic? What? Wait, I always forget what it's called. Red Magic gaming phone? Wait, it is Red Magic. Did they just not have the 9S Pro? Red Magic 10 Pro. Yeah. I mean, that phone clearly exists. It's not like I'm insane. 10 Pro. It's ZTE. Oh, yeah, they have like the Chinese version. Okay. So these are the battery tests that I deem the most important right now. I think the GSM Arena does phenomenal work in actually using very scientific methods and being careful in what data they use. One thing that I'll already say, gaming on 8 Elite products is good. So and the Dimensity 9400 is not bad either. So if the iPhone just lost by a little bit in gaming to those other phones, I would have absolutely no problem with that. Now, I would have a problem if it lost against the Pixel 9 Pro XL or the S24 Ultra, where you'll see notable differences. But you see, the Vivo, yes, it needs higher capacity to achieve about the same battery life as the iPhone. The Oppo, also like plus minus 20 minutes. Those are all bullshit anyway, right? And then the ZTE device, obviously being gaming optimized. Now, you could probably drop that battery life quite a lot if you want with high performance mode, but you shouldn't do that as a comparison with the rest because those phones don't quite have the same functionality. Yes, they might have dedicated gaming modes, but it's not the same. And then with the rest, right, you can see the browsing test and the video watch time, which is probably what most of us do combined, right? Because YouTube is technically combining these two tests. The iPhone wins both. Neither the Vivo nor the Oppo embarrass themselves here. Where is HTC? Believe me, brother, I would love, like, I'll go on another distraction right now. HTC One. Oh, Jesus, that brings up freaking memories. I think, like, it's not perfect. I mean, the bezels, like, I wish it didn't have like that HTC logo here, but I think that this is almost peak design for smartphones. Yes, of course, it wouldn't be able to do like wireless charging, probably wouldn't have the best radio frequency transparency. These devices, man, like, and I mean, Apple kind of followed that up with the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, and honestly, I think this design was actually a little better. But like, even like the HTC One, like the cheaper versions, right? They still had this very recognizable look. It was very off its time in a good way, right? 16:9 screen. Room for some speakers at the front. Obviously, amazing stereo speakers for its day. But man, like, I wish, like, this is why I dislike the takes, for example, by Mr. Mobile, who is like, oh my God, the slab smartphone, I need like random LED lights on that shit, or I need everything to be a foldable. No, man, you need this. You need actually like some good designers who are not just want to copy Apple, who have a distinct vision for both hardware and software. Now, they did some stupid shit like putting in a 4 megapixel camera. That's okay. Individual choices can be discussed. But, and it's not like I'm saying, oh, you definitely need, all your problems are solved with an aluminum unibody design. But I am saying that it's better to have a distinct vision that might lead you to like a unibody design than having like the 20th foldable that does the exact same thing, but still with a user interface that's mostly copied from iPhone and iPad. At least like one compliment that I'll give to the OnePlus Open, I think that their multitasking system over there was actually quite innovative and quite interesting. And unfortunately, I cannot add HTC to that battery life comparison. But I'll just try to show you that the reason why I say the iPhone performs well is not because I look just at GSM Arena. You just saw how the iPhone performed in the Tech Droider video. Whenever I like my Spidey sense activates and I'm like, and by the way, the Galaxy really benefits here from phenomenal speaker time. So this is software optimization often. I don't think Apple cares that much about call time, or they just use way too high of quality. And I think whenever a 6,000 milliamp hour device doesn't even get you 30 hours of call time, I honestly just think they didn't give a crap about optimizing for that in software. Like even the ZTE here, 40 hours sounds good, but that's like 20% less than the Galaxy with 40% more battery capacity. But I'll just showing you these things because I do believe that whenever people downplay the iPhone, they'll mention stuff like it has less memory, or look, it has the smaller battery capacity. But then you'll actually analyze those things individually, and you'll find that the end results are often not quite what you expect. Or just like all those speed comparison tests where the iPhone with 8 gigs of RAM ends up holding up strong against products with 12 and sometimes even 16 gigabytes of RAM, sometimes having to reload fewer apps than those products. And the other thing is here, performance. Again, nicely overclocked chip, right? You see it does definitely get a little bit higher on average. It more easily reaches like that 10,000 milliamp hours. It also more easily reaches around the 3200 range in single core. Antutu is a mess. I think that Antutu probably brings down the S25 Ultra down to thermal issues. Also, Antutu is not perfect to compare devices with different flagships, certainly not different operating system. So that's one thing that I also often have to call out when people say, oh, this Android device has like 3 million in Antutu. First of all, it never does quite as well in real world as it does in pre-production tests. So usually it ends up having like 10-15% less. But then you see you overclocked it and you ended up with worse results. Again, Wildlife Extreme is outdated. Use Steel Nomad Lite instead. But that's not the point here. So the sustained performance is similar to the Galaxy S24 Ultras. There's 41% CPU performance loss and 50% GPU performance drop. So keep that in mind. 41%, 50%, right? Let's look at the Vivo X200 Pro, which is powered by the Dimensity 9400 here. So it's not the exact same chip. For one, battery life, it gets brighter. But let's actually go to performance. So the CPU is 58%, and then 3D model wildlife was 44%. So you see it actually did better on the CPU test, but worse on the GPU test. So it's really hard to make these comparisons sometimes. And whenever you especially test, like you let one game run for like half a battery life benchmark, I really encourage you, for one, to never do that. Always use several games, and also please make sure that the settings are actually the same, and also please make sure that whatever you're doing is actually representative, because 3D Mario Wildlife Extreme likes Snapdragon chips. It just simply does. So yeah, these are just details that I like to cover, not because I think they make a specific point. I mean, I could make the Vivo look bad here, right? It does definitely not reach the levels of performance of an A18 Pro or 8 Elite in many ways, but I'm just trying to tell you there's a lot of nuance here. Let's look actually at the Oppo Find X8 Pro, which is powered by the also by the Dimensity 9400. So we'll look into performance over here. Oh man, ColorOS, I just cannot look at it. It's just such a blatant iOS copy. But yeah, you see here, it did perform actually a little bit better than the Vivo, both in single core and multi-core. And then when you actually look at the sustained performance levels, right, you see it does perform better, right? But then the GT7 Pro, the phone that actually had notable throttling issues in some of the first reviews for it, actually had better sustained performance. This is why I'm saying, guys, it's just Wildlife Extreme is also bad, and it specifically likes Snapdragon chips. Just trying to tell you, it's not that clear. But also, the Dimensity 9400 seems to have the best ray tracing engine, so maybe that really helped the Vivo and the Oppo in the War Thunder game, because the War Thunder game does have some ray tracing as far as I know. But now that becomes really shitty because you somehow chose this game over everything else. So yeah, again, I'm not actually trying to say that either TechDroider or TechChap have any form of bias. I'm just trying to go through with you through the methodology and find potential issues. I would do the same thing if the iPhone won. It doesn't matter. I mean, the iPhone did win one of those tests. The iPhone did win GSM Arena, and I'm still criticizing GSM Arena for certain methodological things they're doing. Yeah, but that's about it for the Galaxy S25 Ultra. We kind of also used it to talk about just like the broader Android landscape right now. Before we finish, I'll just, if you're anyway interested in stocks and shit like that, highly recommend you go check out some of the data about Apple's latest financial quarter. So if you wonder, yes, technically, even though most of that quarter happened at the end of 2024, it is the quarter one of 2025. Astronomical numbers across the board. $124.3 billion of revenue, $36.3 billion of profits, very high free cash flow, a lot of returns that they're giving through cash buybacks and dividends to investors. The iPhone makes up still way over half the overall revenue. The biggest category by far after iPhone is now services. It should be also interesting that the iPhone is, except for maybe wearables, the hardware category with the highest profit margin, but then services beats it by far. So if maybe profit margins for hardware are somewhere around the 40% range, services give Apple up to 75% profit margin. So if we actually looked at the pie between like profits, it would actually have a bigger portion for services. iPhone would still be first, but services would look even bigger in comparison to something like Mac and iPad. Speaking of Mac and iPad though, those were actually the hardware business sides that most overperformed last quarter. So for the iPad, it was the iPad mini and some, of course, sales still from the M4 iPad Pro. There was no big iPad launch at the end of last year. So, or at the end of 2023. So that's how it compares favorably to Q1 2024, right? We're talking basically the December quarter of 24 and the December quarter of 23. But in just like financial terms, this would be called Q1 2024. And this is now just right now that we got was quarter 1 2025. So a lot of stuff to consider. Products hit almost $100 billion dollars of revenue. Services over 26, so combined close to 125. Should be interesting to note, the iPhone is roughly flat. Yes, it's technically a small drop here of like 1. But it basically doesn't matter. It's primarily driven by a loss of business in China. So Apple dropped in China by 11% from $20.8 billion to 18.513. There is a little bit of like patriotic resurgence in China. They try to encourage people to buy more domestic brands. There was also some controversy that Chinese government employees would only be allowed to use domestic brands. And China is a communist country, does have a lot of government employees, and then those have a lot of family members who then might be discouraged. Then there's also that US scandal with TikTok, like China pretends like it's such a big offense that the US is banning TikTok, so and therefore motivating its people to also use fewer Western services, even though every other Western social media service is banned in China anyway. Yeah, so very, very good results. But you can see the Mac grew by over $1 billion here. That's because seemingly the launch of the M4 Mac family was more successful than the launch of the M3 Mac family. Now, not only does it include the Mac Mini, which the M3 launch did not, but also Apple increased the RAM amount on the M2 and M3 MacBook Air from 8 gigabytes to 16 for the same price. So my assumption is, and Apple kind of alluded to that in the conference call, is that the MacBook Air also saw increases in sales, even though it didn't get upgraded. The iPad, again, up thanks to the M4 iPad Pro being launched in the middle of this year. There were no notable iPad releases in 2024, in 2023, so that helps. And with wearables, they're basically flat. The main thing that really differentiates those is, for one, the AirPods Pro 2 are getting older and older, so they're becoming less and less attractive. So the fact that this category still holds at such a high level is actually pretty impressive. And then the Apple Watch, Apple launched the Apple Watch Series 10, which is much more exciting than the Series 9. But alongside the Series 9, Apple also launched the Apple Watch Ultra 2. They did not launch an Apple Watch Ultra 3 at the end of last year. So even in their earnings call, the new CFO said that they basically had a bad comparison year over year because they basically still kept selling the Ultra 2. So this is why I assume that probably in a year they will have even better numbers here, as we expect to get AirPods Pro 3, which will probably be a massive seller and a way bigger boom to the category than AirPods 4. And Apple Watch Ultra 3, it might not even outsell like the regular series or the regular SE, but it's just more expensive by default, so that helps, of course, with generating revenue. And yeah, then services, you see still nice up double-digit growth. European regulations seemingly didn't hurt it enough. And when you look at regions, you see Europe is actually up. Almost 10%, so that nothing happened in Europe that really hurt them. America is up. Apple actually said that they were significantly higher up in regions where they were able to launch Apple Intelligence, and obviously Apple Intelligence is expanding to German, French, Spanish, Italian, simplified Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and all those countries that speak those languages in Japan, all over the world. So they expect to get potentially even bigger help, especially with iPhone sales in other regions. But you can see Asia Pacific is up, Japan is up. Japan probably also helped by a lot of price increases there because the currency was just so bad for a while that the foreign exchange range to the dollar just killed the amount of money coming in from Japan. Europe, well, thankfully didn't get any new price increases. The prices in euro are still very, very high. Just the currency is not doing too well, at least in comparison to the dollar. It's doing quite fine against most other currencies in the world. So incredible earnings per share as well, over $2.4. So this was a phenomenal quarter, and usually we don't even cover financial stuff that much. All I care about the finances are that they are stable in the sense that the company is sustainable, and I care about that I'm not getting entirely ripped off. Given that Apple didn't dramatically change their profit margins, I still believe the services profit margin for Apple, for Microsoft, for Google, for all of these big tech companies, they're way, way too strong. Like I believe Microsoft services on many stuff is profits on many such services are like over 80% or something like that. It's absolutely insane. I mean, Apple's at 75 isn't that bad either. But yeah, it's absolutely crazy how much money is just being transferred through those companies. And we'll probably get an annual summary also sometime soon. I assume like next quarter. Yeah, but the amount of revenue per year is just crazy for Apple. And profit too, of course, profit being what matters at the end of the day. Samsung also had some pretty decent quarter results that just came out. I believe they made like 8 times less profit than Apple. Like Apple made like 36 billion and they made like 4.5. And before that, they had like quarters where they made like 1 billion because their chip business was just completely tanking for a while. Now their memory business is a little stronger. So maybe that helps. And their advanced packaging is also doing all right with all the AI business right now that's available. But yeah, that's about it for today. 1.5 hour worth of stream, covered actually a little bit more than I thought I would. Let me briefly look if I skipped any rumors or big news here. You can now read the UUR book from Apple TV Plus show Severance. That's funny. Let me see if 95 Mac has anything. Nope. So, and again, speaking of Apple TV Plus, go watch Severance, go watch Silo, some of the most amazing shows happening right now. And I believe Mythic Quest is also coming back. So, strong recommendation. Guys, thank you so much for joining. We had some new people checking out the stream today. I always appreciate that. Had some lively chatters. Thank you so much for joining. I'll be not streaming tomorrow, but maybe on Sunday or on Monday, I'll probably react to Mark Gurman's Power Run newsletter. Maybe if there's even more Galaxy S25 Ultra stuff, I think we have now a pretty comprehensive image of the performance, the battery life, the cameras, the display, the speakers, the charging speed, the microphones. So we basically understand what's going on at this point. Maybe if MKBHD launches like a video, I would react to that. Who knows, maybe he will have like a unique take. But for now, that's not going to be the case. Thank you guys so much again. As always, let me know what you would like to see me cover next. Do all the YouTube jazz with subscribing, liking, sharing, becoming channel members, YouTube, Patreon supporters, however you want to support me. Thank you so much. This is Mark Tech, tuning out.